Hi folks, thanks for joining me for this week's Stillwater pattern. This is tied with the small Stillwaters in mind, so without further ado, let's get into it. In the vise then is a Hanak H970 barbless hook. This one's at size 10. As you can see, it's a black nickel hook and it's on a heavy wire gauge. I've coupled it with the Hanak Competition 3.8 brass bead, and as you can see, it's Chartreuse. So the colour combination, black and green, is very effective early and late season. So predominantly the colours are going to be black, and I also want to achieve quite a bit of movement, hence the long Marabou tail. The thread I'm going to be using today is the UTC. It's at 140 denier, and as you can see, it's the black. So first thing to do then is quite a bit of wax onto the thread. Just make sure you rub it through your fingers just to get that wax to sink in. And then what I always like to do when I'm working with a bead is build up quite a bit of a bump at the start here, and that just stops the bead running backwards on the hook, which can be quite annoying. Then run your thread all the way down to where there's a pronounced bump on the 970. Just there, and then you can take away your waste piece. Now what I always do, if you follow my videos, you'll notice that when I'm doing these long Marabou tail type flies, I like to build a small bump at the end here. And what this does is it just stops, or it helps prevent the Marabou tail wrapping round the shank or the bend of the hook, which can be quite annoying, especially if you're fishing a Stillwater and you're doing a very slow retrieve. You find you get your fly back and the Marabou's all wrapped round the bend here. It can be quite frustrating. So I'm going to bring my thread all the way back up to the bead, and just to make that look a little bit neater, I'm going to add a little bit of UV resin to my bump. This isn't entirely necessary. I just think it makes it look a little bit nicer. And make sure you cure that off. And make sure, if you are going to do this, as I say, it's not really required, but if you are going to do it, make sure you've cured the resin off. Because if you put Marabou onto the tacky resin, it'll just stick there. Okay, so the tail, I'm going to be using some of Comp Candy's. This is the Blackjack Marabou. I've already got a feather off that I've been working with, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and the measurement I use is from my knuckle to the end of my thumbnail. So when I get the plume, I grab it from the knuckle, and that gives me consistency. So when I'm tying up lots of flies, which is rare, but when I am, I get the same sort of consistency with the tail. So what I'm going to do is take away my waste end here, put a little twist in it, and then just off camera, I'm snipping away that waste. Now I'm going to dress that up to where my thread's sitting, and the reason I'm tying it in so close to the bead is I want to just keep the body at the same width. I'm going to run it all the way back to where my bump is, and I'm fairly happy with that. Now the tail on this occasion is just a little bit longer than I want, so I'm going to come in with my thumb and forefinger, and I want the tail to be long but not quite that long. And the reason for that is if you keep your tail really long, when you're fishing these types of flies, what you find is you start getting tail nips, and that's the fish just snagging at the tail, which is not much good to you. You want them to take the whole thing. Now I'm going to add a little bit of crystal flash. I've got some here, it's like a peachy colour. Just one down each side, and the first one I'll just take the length on my side, a couple of turns, and then I can bring it over and catch it in on your side. Simple enough to do. Then I can come in with my snips and just trim that up. Got plenty left there, don't throw it away, it will do for your next fly. So just put that to the side. Then next I'm going to wet my thumb and forefinger and just slick everything back. And it just makes it a little bit easier to work with if you damp down your materials. So next then I'm going to add in my wire rib, and what I'm going to be using is the Veniard No27. It's a silver rib, which always works well with black. And I'm just going to catch that in as well. Come back to the start, and I'm going to add a body material now. You can add different things to get different effects, but today I'm going to be using some Troutline's pure squirrel dubbing, and as you can see it's been dyed black. Got a little bit out here, and it's just to give you a base. As you've seen from the original fly that was in the vise at the start of the video, you don't really get to see much of the body by the time you've palmered down. So just get that dub on. Dubs on very easily, squirrels great to work with. And then simply work your way up the body. And I've just come shy off the bead here, which I'm not overly worried about. In fact, I will just add the tiniest bit at the front, just to finish that off. If you're going to do a job right and all that. Okay, so that's looking not too bad. Now, next I'm going to grab my first hackle, which is a black cock cape, and I should have pre-selected one, but I didn't, sorry about that. I'll just pick one quickly from the cape, and what I want to do is just get the right length. I don't want it too much, so yeah, that looks about right. I'm going to just strip away the material so I've got a bit of a stalk. Now I'm going to trim that stalk so I've got about just over 1/8 of an inch. And then with, you see the natural bend in the feather, well I want that to go into the body of the fly. Then I'm going to tuck it right up to the eye, or the bead should I say, and catch that in. Now I have left, it might be difficult to see because I've tied it on my side, a tiny little gap between the stalk and the feathers, and that's so I can get my turn started. So I'm going to just break the stalk over, and I'm going to catch in the end with my hackle pliers, like so, and then the first turn is going to come over and it's literally going to be turned on top of itself. So you get that extra little bit of bushiness at the front. And then I can start bringing back my palmer. Take your time. You don't want it slipping from your hackle pliers, springing back on you. It can be really frustrating. And it's quite a nice thick palmering. Like I said, you can barely see the squirrel dubbed body. And then when you come over for your last turn, find your wire and just work that through the palmering. You can let go of your hackle plier at this point. Now you will catch in some of these fibres, it just can't be helped, and it's nothing to be worrying about. There's plenty there that's still going to give you that massive movement that you want in this fly. I really believe that the success of these flies come down to the movement. The colour combination is only secondary, but black and green is very effective. Okay, once you've come round with your rib, catching your rib and a couple of turns to secure your wire, keeping tension on your thread, you can then twist away the wire and then see where your feather is at the end, come in with your snips and just remove that. So let's just see how we're doing. Lick your thumb and forefinger, your left hand, and just slick everything back, gets any loose fibres out the way. And I'm fairly pleased with that. I've got a nice thick hackle at the front and it's tapering down to the rear. Okay, so to add a little splash of colour, I'm going to be using some of this stuff. Now it's Partridge hackle, but it's been dyed pink, and it's primarily been made for shrimp patterns, but I never let little things like that get in my way. Whatever I think is going to work, I use. So I've got a feather I've pre-selected. I'm going to pick up my hackle pliers again and just connect the tip of the feather like so. Then I can slick back the materials, and once I've got that going the right way, I can lay it on and catch it in. A couple of turns, slick everything back, and a couple of turns in front. Now next then, I want to bend that round, and I want to get at least 2 turns of the pink hackle. So I'm going to ignore my tag end, it's too small to be worrying about, and it will just add a little bit to the hackle. So as I bring it round the first time, I'm going to slick it back to get the most. So there's 1 turn, and 1 more should do the job. Bring it up, slick it back, and that brings me right up to the edge of my bead. So next then, I'm going to come over the top with my thread just to catch that in. Now at this point, keeping tension on your thread, you can release your hackle plier. Now I've brought this round your side, which I usually don't do. I usually bring it to my own side so I can see what I'm doing. But just so you can see, I'm slicking everything back out the way, and I'm building just a little collar there. Now once you've done that, you can then just rip the partridge away, it will come away freely in your hand. But remember to keep tension on your thread. If you don't have tension on your thread, your hackle will just unravel and come undone. So again, I'm wetting my thumb and forefinger just to slick all that back, and I'm going to add some UV resin to my thread. Get a couple of turns on before finding my whip finish tool. Three turns to hold that into place. Then I can remove my thread, give it a quick blast. And then you can play about with the hackle till it's sitting exactly how you want it, and you've got an effective Stillwater lure there. So what you're getting is, with the little brass bead, you're getting lots of movement. It'll swim in a jiggy motion, and the feathers will give lots of movement, and that long tail be very attractive to trout. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please think about clicking the button. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time.